does the fat percentage ever change in the different phases? Not necessarily, but sometimes it's a manipulation of carbs or fat. Typically, one of them has to be lower. Because protein is like the non-negotiable, usually you're manipulating one or the other. So, and that depends on usually your taste buds, because some people can go without one but can't go without the other. But usually you can't remove carbs and fat or you kind of go insane. So it depends on which one you have an affinity for. Usually I wouldn't say to go beyond, 23 to 20% of your fat and your entire calorie intake for fat. But some people can go as low as 20. I don't recommend it, because lower than that, you start mentally, things start happening. So you want to stay above 20%. So protein will always stay the same. Yes, your protein stays the same. If anything, it would increase when you're in a fat loss phase, because whenever you're in a caloric deficit, you need more protein. So you can typically eat a little bit more carbs when you're in a muscle building phase. The thing with carbs is that carbs is it produces insulin, which insulin is a building hormone. So a lot of times, like, insulin gets a bad rep, and it's not really bad, and carbs aren't the enemy. But carbs, they help your body with insulin, and insulin is a building hormone. So when you're building something, it's great to have the carbs. They're going to give you the energy. They're going to help you to build. When you are not building something and you're a little bit more sedentary, then your body builds fat. So it's still like, okay, I'm supposed to be building something. So it's looking to store it, and it's going to store it based on what you're doing. So if you're, doing a lot of like heavy duty lifting, then your body's like, okay, I'm supposed to build muscle with this. If you're not, and you're just kind of sitting around and you're just scarfing carbs all day long and not having any movement, then it's like, okay, I'm supposed to store this as fat. So that's the reason why carbs aren't necessarily the bad guy. They're just, you have to use them strategically in how you manipulate them. And someone asked about vegetarians. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is something that often gets kind of disregarded. Like, so when I start talking protein, a lot of time my vegetarian peeps kind of tune out. And this is something that happens with a lot of clients too. When they come to me, they're vegetarian, and I say, okay, well, these are the protein requirements. And they're like, yeah, but I'm vegan or I'm vegetarian. And I'm like, these are still the requirements. So it's great that you asked that, because this does still apply to you. It applies, meat eating or not. And honestly, vegans especially, I don't know if you're vegan, I know you said vegetarian, but vegetarian, but especially vegans, actually need, when it comes to fat loss, they need a higher percentage of protein than meat eaters, only because the types of protein are different. So since it's all plant-based, your body's going to respond a little bit differently, and most of the studies are done on animal-based proteins. So in order for you to get the same benefits, a lot of times you need more. So I have a vegan client, for instance, and she eats, over 200 grams of protein. Like, I don't even know, she's like a freak of nature. She eats a lot of protein breads. I don't know the name of it. Usually she's on here, but she's not today. So I don't know the name of it, but there's a protein bread that she uses for her sandwiches, which I know whenever she runs out of it, I can tell, because I can look in her diary and her protein is really, really low. I think she also does make use of shakes, whenever she has to. Obviously, your beans and nut butters and things like that, they're going to give you protein, but you just have to be careful because of the ratios. They're going to increase everything else too. So like something like beans are usually really high in protein, but they have like quadruple the carbs. So it's almost like it's really hard, because you're trying to increase your protein and your carbs are like off the chain, because most of your proteins are going to be attached to carbs. Do you eat any meat substitutes, like, the Morningstar Farms type meats or anything like that? Because I know some of those they're a bit better in their ratios with protein to carbs. So I would hope that some of my vegetarian friends could pop in, but I don't know. Most of yours would come from dairy, I'm assuming, but like I said, she's vegan and she doesn't even eat dairy, so I really don't know how she does it. I did, but they all have gluten in them. Oh, okay. So that would definitely be a factor because those would be much higher in protein. You may have to start off with shakes until you find more options that suit whatever your problems you're having with your gastro. So I would start off with shakes. I would pay more attention to the ratios in the things that you are eating. So when you do find something that has a high protein, the closer you can get that ratio of protein to carbs to being equalish, the better off that you're going to be. You have lots of chronic pain and the gluten seems to make it worse. So yeah, if you can get them closer, so instead of like a bagel that has like 9 grams of protein and 60 grams of carbs, you want to look for something that's lower in the carbs and then high in the protein. So most of you're probably not going to find things that are, excuse me, more than, 15, maybe even 20 grams of protein at a time. So you're going to have to be very strategic with it. 40, 40, 20. You can start with 40, 30, 30. 30% is probably going to be hard enough to get as a vegetarian. 40% protein is a bit high, especially to start with. Most people would never have to even get there. So you could probably get anywhere from 25 to 30% in your fat and still be fine. So you don't have to drop it to 20. But 40, 30, 30 is usually the starting point, and then you can strategically go from there, going up or down like 5% on each side of either carbs or fat, but not protein. You can go up to 35% in protein if you had to, but I don't think you need to go to 40. As a vegetarian, 35% would be plenty. So I don't know if anyone else had any questions. As a recap, we were just talking about changing up your foods so that you can prevent plateaus, because they will come. So don't change up everything at once. When you have all of the changes, do a brainstorm of all of the changes that you would like to make, work on them one by one so that you have a natural progression in your food. Don't slash all of your calories at the same time. Start with maybe only a 5 or 10% deficit and work your way to 15 max, and then only stay there for 4 to 6 weeks and then take a break and go back to maintenance for 1 to 2 weeks before doing that again. So you just want to do it everything in increments. Same thing with your protein. If you're nowhere near 100, start slowly working your way up to that and then working your way up to 150 or whatever.